Okay, we'll start with this. Another look at the upcoming Taylor versus Serrano 3 undercard and what fights we can expect to see. It was announced earlier today that Ramla Ali will be returning to action against Brazil's own Lila Furtado in what is Ramla's most valuable promotions debut, and it would seem that they are throwing her on the deep end. Ramla Ali, 35 years old, sports a professional record of 9 wins with 2 losses, no draws, 2 knockouts, having been knocked out once in 11 professional bouts. To Brazil's own Lila Furtado, 34, sports professional record of 11 wins with 2 losses, no draws, 2 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 13 professional bouts. You may have seen this fighter here and there on some UK shows against Raven Chapman, against Karis Artingstall, both of which Lila put on the back foot with her come-forwardness, with her aggression. The relevance of that is that both Karis and Raven are aggressive fighters most of the time. Most of the time, they're the ones stepping into their punches and taking it to their opponents, but with Lila, she put them on their back foot. Forced them to move and punch. Forced them to box. And that is who young Ramla is going to be facing next. Perhaps the saving grace for Ramla is that that's already her methodology. That is already what she does best. Move and punch. Use the ring, use the jab, use the counters, and box. If that is how both Karis and Raven beat Lila Furtado, perhaps that is how Ramla can beat Lila Furtado, who's coming off of 2 consecutive victories, once in July of last year and the other in December. She has since rebounded to those consecutive losses to Raven and Karis, and she's back in the winner's bracket, coming off of 2 consecutive wins. No ring rust to report since she's seen action in the last 12 months, whereas Ramla, the night of the fight, will have not seen action in about a year's time. Her last fight, the Haney Mercado fight in June of last year. It's the only fight that she had last year, but there was still time remaining for Ramla to bounce back, to have a rebound fight. Now, I don't know if her relationship with Matchroom ended with that fight, and perhaps that's why she didn't have a rebound fight, but she could have used one, because the night of this one, she will have been out for a while against an aggressive customer, a physical, rough and tumble fighter. She's still coming off that loss to Haney Mercado. That is the other caveat, that in some instances, Ramla has not handled her opponent's aggression all that well. In the Julissa Guzman fight, she got knocked out in the first one, rebounded and avenged the loss in the rematch, but then she fought Haney. Remembering that fight, Haney Mercado was the aggressor and Ramla Ali was the defender. And I remember the fight being competitive. I remember scoring it for Ramla, but the judges scored it for Haney, who did little more than come forward and throw flurries, many of which seemed ineffective, but she got the decision. She was aggressive, and that was enough to win her the fight. So is being aggressive going to be enough for Lila? Is that going to win her the fight? I also wonder about Ramla's corner situation, because up until last year, she was training here in America on the West Coast with Manny Robles. And I'm not sure if that's the situation now. Is she still with him, or did she get a new corner? If she did, she will be breaking in that new corner the night of, and this is hardly the opponent to experiment with. As stated, Lila Furtado is an overly aggressive customer, and Ramla has struggled with aggression before. The rest of Ramla's career is on the other side of this fight, and it's not a given that she wins under these circumstances. It's not a gimme. This is a 50-50 pick'em fight, which is a hard way to come back to the ring and make your debut under the MVP banner. They didn't match her soft.
We'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches.
Elsewhere in the world of boxing, boxing insider Rick Glacier took to his social media and stated, "Wow, all facts, not boxing rumors. Boots Ennis is now totally ducking Teofimo Lopez, and Devin Haney wants insane money to face Teo. Money that wouldn't even be printable if Haney was still WBC 140-pound champion, as that's really Haney ducking Teofimo. They're all ducking Teofimo."
Let's break this down.
Teofimo's last performance against Arnold Barboza was not so earth-shattering, so devastating, that he suddenly becomes some sort of a bogeyman. I mean, that's not what I saw. But as far as Devin pricing himself out, I can believe that. You see, Devin's been getting paid well in excess of his actual market value for many, many years now. It has everything to do with what he was guaranteed during his time at DAZN. They were overpaying fighters left and right to cultivate American talent to their platform, as they had just debuted in America, and in doing so, they overpaid Devin. They paid him well in excess of what his fights generate, so he got used to that.
Takes that attitude over there to Top Rank, same deal.
Now, some still can't wrap their minds around the concept of overpaying a fighter. What is that? Should the fighters not be paid handsomely for their efforts?
They're sacrifices.
But here's the thing about sacrifices. We're not talking about municipal servants or civil servants. We're not talking about soldiers. And a pugilist making sacrifices is tantamount to any professional in any profession, making sacrifices to do what they love to do. They're not making sacrifices for me and you. They're doing it for themselves and their bank accounts.
So let's not slap some altruistic tone over the sacrifices that boxers make. A boxer like Devin isn't making sacrifices for some greater good. He's making sacrifices for his own wallet.
So irrespective of the sacrifices that fighters make, there is such a thing as overpaying them. If you're paying a fighter well in excess of what he's worth, well in excess of what his fights generate, you are overpaying them. And that is not sustainable.
Now that's why Devin only boxed once last year. After the controversial outcome of the Ryan Garcia fight that was subsequently turned into a no contest, that was April of last year, Devin had the rest of it to come back and have a rebound fight, a confidence builder, to prime him for the coming year. The reason he didn't.
Remember that he was WBC champion last year, and remember that he was under orders to face his mandatory challenger, Sandor Martin. The reason he didn't is because nobody was going to break the piggy to do that fight.
Pay Devin through the nose to fight his mandatory challenger, especially when Devin is a free agent, without a commitment to a Top Rank, to a matchroom. Why would you fritter away dollars on him and his fight?
I remember Devin feeling raw about it with Eddie Hearn, with Matchroom. I guess he was expecting them to bid on the fight, but why would they? It's gonna run them millions to do it for a fight that ain't a hot ticket, with no commitment from Devin.
I remember Eddie Hearn saying that Devin's got a promoter's license. He's got DHP, doesn't he? If he thinks he's worth it, why doesn't he just put up the money?
Why indeed. So when Rick Glacier now says that Devin is pricing himself out of a Teofimo Lopez fight, I can believe that for those aforementioned reasons, and I can believe that because Teofimo is still WBO super lightweight champion, where Devin can't make super lightweight.
Not healthy.
I don't know for sure, but maybe a conversation took place to where they're trying to decide the weight for the match, and Devin says he's not going to go back down there unless it's for X amount of dollars, at which point X amount of dollars is too much.
So why doesn't Teo just move up?
You could do that too, but Devin is likely looking for a number comparable to what he stood to make with Ryan. And in fighting Teo, you're not fighting Ryan. Tio doesn't have Ryan's drawing power, his marketability, his fanfare, so when you fight Tio instead of Ryan, it's gotta be for less money.
Because it's not the same guy, it's not the same fight, the fight itself doesn't have the same earning potential. Those are the breaks.
Now, when Rick Glacier says that Boots is ducking Tio, that one I struggle with. That one I struggle with because I know that Rick Glacier seems to have an axe to grind with Eddie Hearn, and he takes every opportunity to take shots at him. He's been doing that for years.
On behalf of whoever he's rubbing elbows with. Before it was Top Rank, and now it's Golden Boy. It's not to say that some of what Rick Glacier has said in the past hasn't checked out, because it has, but other times, it's just been him shilling for whoever he's working with. So when he's buddy-buddy with Golden Boy, they're not friends with Matchroom, and neither is he.
Matchroom promotes Boots. Here's this guy accusing Boots of ducking Tio.
Why the hell would Boots need to duck Tio?
The better question is, why would Rick Glacier frame it that way? We know that Boots Ennis has a mandatory challenger in the queue in Shakram Gayasov. We also know that that order for them to fight has already come down. As a result of beating Montestanionis and taking his WBA title from him, he so adopted Shakram Gayasov as his mandatory challenger, and that situation needs to be settled. So at this time, Boots isn't free to fight a voluntary in Teofimo.
Not unless he coughs up the WBA title, gives it to Shakram. Then he can go ahead with the Lopez fight, but then he will be subject to the 10-pound rehydration cap via the IBF.
Remember that a unified champion is absolved of that rehydration cap via the IBF, so long as he has more than one alphabet title. But if Boots sacrifices the WBA, that leaves him only with the IBF, and you can fight Teofimo for that.
But then you're subject to that rehydration cap. So maybe that's what's going on behind the scenes, and maybe that's why Rick Glacier chose to frame it where Boots is ducking Teofimo.
I don't necessarily know that I can believe it from Rick that Boots is ducking Teofimo. Why? Because Teofimo's been looking so dangerous, so devastating?
Or is it just that you're so childish?
And so petty, you chose to misrepresent the situation. More details need to come out. The aforementioned parties are the ones that need to speak on it. Team Lopez, Team Boots, maybe he is ducking, maybe it's just Rick.
Maybe Rick is full of shit.
I don't see anything in Teofimo Lopez that Boots needs to be afraid of. But hey, we've got to wait for more details to come out, like I said. We've got to wait for the aforementioned parties to speak on it. Rick by itself, I don't know that I can take it from him. Not when it comes to this.
Elsewhere in the welterweight division, Manny Pacquiao is warned about returning. God forbid, something could happen.
Teddy Atlas has warned Manny Pacquiao about making his boxing comeback. Pacquiao returns to the ring at age 46 against the WBC welterweight champion Mario Barrios. Pac-Man left boxing in 2021 after suffering a loss to Yordenis Lugas. However, he left his mark in the sport. He became an 8-weight world champion while also holding the record for the oldest welterweight champion ever. He achieved the latter when he beat Keith Thurman at age 40 in 2019. Since his 2021 retirement, Pac-Man has had some exhibitions. He took on Japanese kickboxer Rikuya Enpo. In his last bout, it was not his finest performance, as he was outboxed during those 3 rounds. Pacquiao's return has faced backlash. Many are questioning why he has received a WBC ranking at number 5 when he's not boxed in 4 years. His return also damages a unification fight, as Brian Norman and Jaron Ennis will have to wait. Most notably, there are safety concerns, especially since there was backlash over Mike Tyson returning at age 58 to face off against Jake Paul.
A social media influencer, a novice, not a world champion.
Atlas has now had his say over Pacquiao's return. I hope Manny Pacquiao is not fighting for money, because the great Manny Pacquiao, with all the greatness in his life and everything he's accomplished and done in the ring and outside of it, for his people, for the Filipino people, for the world, for the audience, for the boxing fans, for all that he's done, it would be unfair to have him now, at this point in his life, to have to fight for money.
Well, why else would he be coming back, Teddy? I mean, why else would a 46-year-old man and a 46-year-old fighter subject himself to the rigors of a camp, to the rigors of a fight, having accomplished all that he's already accomplished, why would he still be doing this if not for money? Manny's never been good with money. Manny's never been business-minded. So when I see him coming back, I think he is fighting for money. He might have to.
I have no problem with him jumping the line out of respect for what he's done. The problem is where he is in life, physically, and what that really means, and what it can mean, and the damage he can do to a sport he obviously loves if, God forbid, something could happen to Manny Pacquiao at this point because of things that I think we're honestly talking about, Atlas said. He doesn't have a problem with Manny being given a rank 3 or 4 years removed from the sport coming off a loss, but I do. I do, because there's a mandatory challenger in the queue.
If Manny wins, is Manny gonna fight him? Is Manny gonna fight Suleiman Sissoko? If Manny wins, is Manny gonna unify titles with Brian Norman? Is he gonna unify titles with Boots Ennis? What happens if Manny wins? Because these conversations tend to be treated as the ends have to justify the means. That Manny's not too old to keep fighting if he wins.
That's how these conversations tend to be treated, where Mario Barrios is not the biggest threat in the welterweight division just because you beat him. And if you beat him, then what?
This is the best case scenario. And even in a best case scenario, I don't like it.
Because if Manny wins, you can forget about the World Boxing Council ordering him to fight Suleiman Sissoko. They will leave Suleiman in limbo like they left Kenya Enriquez in limbo for 3 years, not ordering the Yesenia Gomez fighter, what they did to Dillian White. They didn't order a fight between him and Wilder the whole time that Wilder was champion. That was on purpose.
They're gonna do the same thing if Manny beats Mario. They're not going to order the Sissoko fight. They're going to give Manny the wiggle room to have his pick of the litter while he's champion. I would sooner expect Manny to fight Rolly than for Manny to fight Sissoko, and that's a problem.
Teddy doesn't have a problem with Manny jumping ahead of the queue, but I do, because Manny hasn't fought in 3 or 4 years, and he's literally coming off a loss. So what the hell is the point in ranks if you're gonna fast-track him to a title?
What's the point in sanctioning fees? Why pay them? Why fight in eliminators just for the World Boxing Council to do this? To this day, I don't know why these fighters keep giving these leeches their money.
There are other paths to a title. The WBO, the IBF, that are more Johnny on the spot with their mandates than the World Boxing Council. They're varying inconsistencies that we've often highlighted here on the channel for many years now. All they're going to do with Suleiman is give him an interim title, then charge him sanctioning fees to keep it. That's it.
My aversion to this fight is not limited to concern for Manny Pacquiao's health, because even if he wins, it's a shit show.
It's a circus. He's coming back to do what? Go on an undisputed run? Give me a break.
There's not enough outrage for my taste. I saw more people complaining about Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul than this, when this is actually worse. Because Mario is a world champion. You're supposed to hold him to a higher standard than a social media influencer.
They castigated Jake. They should be castigating Mario. That's how I see it.
Just another opportunist in the sport of boxing.